Hello, Eric here. Okay, I want to talk about the notion of the balance between God's foreknowledge and His will, which I believe can be equated as the same. Okay? Free will and predestination. Okay, so now imagine, if you will, a river. A beautiful river. Nice wide one. One of those, got a few rocks going on in there. All that kind of lappity-doo thing going on there. Nice breeze flowing along. It's gorgeous. Okay? Now God's foreknowledge is included on everything else beyond the river as well. But God's will is the river. Every little sandbar, every little tick or grass, fishes, alligators if you're in Florida, all those things that are in the river, God knows about that. Okay? But you're in His will. That's the river. All the molecules, all that stuff. That's God's will. And God's foreknowledge extends beyond the river to include everything else, all the imaginable topography. All right, now, free will is when we're in the river. Or it's when we're out of the river. See, when we're in the river, we're in this protection. Okay? All good. Swim along. Or we're smart people. Take some of them trees, build a boat, ride along in relative comfort. All things are good. Predestination, when God sticks His finger in the river, or puts a rock or something in the way that we got to navigate our boat around, or if we're swimming, sometimes we can just crawl up on the rock. Because if you're swimming in the will of God, you may be kind of going against the vein, you know. And He'll give us a rock to sit upon and kind of look at that and go, you know, I can see how that fits in His plan. Now we can either get back in the river and continue to swim, or maybe we could wait until a boat comes along and then we can get on the boat and hang with some other people that are trying to follow God's will as well. This brings me to Joshua 5:13 through 15. Okay, so let's read this text. Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hands. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" Ooh. Well, that reminds me of a story in 2 Samuel 16 through 5:11. I'm just going to summarize it here. Where David's going along and he's doing his thing. This guy named Shimei starts whipping stones at him. "How do you do this? You're a murderer. You're a this. You're a that." And his adjutant says, "I'm going to go lop that guy's head off." David says, no. He says God is telling him to do that. We need to ask Him why. Because our perception of God isn't necessarily another person's perception of God. That's why we all got to kind of come together and understand who God is. Now, I've often coined the phrase the God construct. We imagine God who we want Him to be, but He'll demonstrate Himself in our lives whether we want to or not. It's as simple as that. So let's move on. It says, "Neither," he replied. Neither. God's not a respecter of persons. You know, in Genesis, you know, it talks about how God regretted making humans on earth. That's in Genesis chapter 6. He regretted it. He limited their lifespan. It's like, man, I'm tired of these guys. All they are is evil. That's what brought upon the flood. You know, because God, hey, He does some crazy stuff, man. He'd wipe out thousands just for the people, just for who they are. I mean, that's a hard cross to bear, man. But now that we live in an age of grace, 2 commands: love the Lord thy God, love your neighbor as yourself. Neither, he replied, but as commander of the army of the Lord I have now come. That means Joshua is talking directly to the commander of the army of the Lord. And say what the army is: angels, energy, whatever he wants to make it. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" The commander of the Lord army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did so. Now it talks about the gates of Jericho. And then it said, the Lord said to Jericho, "See, I have destroyed Jericho. I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men." And that's where it ties back into the idea of free will and choice. Okay, now, Joshua could have said, "Well, this is insane. I can't believe this. This is impossible." But no. God uses many means to make things happen. Now, how did he make this happen? And see, that's the understanding of what I was talking about earlier, how God exists outside of space-time. Because God, being infinite, what's a 15 billion light year ball of universe? It's a speck of egg. But yet he cares about our individual souls. So when we walk in that and we understand that we have to look beyond what we imagine God to be. He's not some heavenly being in the clouds. He doesn't have a planet somewhere. This is all just energy. So let's move on. March around the city once with all the armed men, and do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of rams and horns, and we all know this story. The walls fell down. So how did that happen? The faith of these people, the energy of these people, resonating in His will, and their acceptance of their choice to bring down the walls of Jericho. All the energies of the earth are His. Paul wrote, "In Him and through Him we move." The water out of the faucet, the water in the river. It's all God. But it is not God. It's an interactive place for us to be able to hang on and understand what it means to be His children. What does it mean to be a child of God? Simple as that. Love the Lord thy God with all your heart and soul and all mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. We need to just understand that God has a plan for us. And it's our choice to swim in a river, or be on the boat, or get in the woods, and live however we want to live. Whether it be simply, or to build a simple civilization, or to build a massive civilization. So, God bless America. Thank you for this awesome country. And you guys have a wonderful day.